Blog Talk Radio.
Choices, decisions, frustrations, and pain. Knowing I'm going to forget her someday. While I still can, I'll challenge all my loved ones, every friend, to look inside their hearts and understand that I will love them. I will love them while I still can.
Well, welcome everyone to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host and founder, Lori LeBay, and I hope you're all having a fabulous day. Spring is here. I know in Minnesota we still have snow on the ground, but it's starting to warm up and melt finally. Alzheimer Speaks is an advocacy-based company, for those of you that aren't familiar with us, that just provides multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. We're all about raising the voice of everyone to find out what are they doing that's working, and being able to share that information and that knowledge and that camaraderie so that we can truly work together to improve lives for those dealing with dementia, because this is not just a disease of one. This truly is a disease of society. And we're just thrilled that you joined us here today. If you like the show, I would encourage you to go ahead and share it and tweet it and put it on your Facebook, because all the episodes are archived, and so people can access these any time of the day when they've got time. So go ahead and scroll through those. It's through your advocacy, through those small little moments of sharing and tweeting and talking about Alzheimer Speaks and what we're doing, that we were recognized as the #1 influencer on the Internet for Alzheimer's by ShareCare and Dr. Oz. So again, I really want to thank you for that, because from the bottom of my heart, this is all about removing the stigmas and the stagnation and the isolation that comes with dementia. I truly believe that when we work collaboratively, we can change the world, and I think we are already. So thank you so much. This is not an easy journey. You can ask anyone who's on it. I've been on it myself with my mom for over 30 years now. For some, it's a quick journey. For others, it's long, and it's hard, just like it has been for myself and my family. I'm not sure if our channel expert, Rick Phelps, who has early onset, will be able to join us or not. Rick is the founder of Memory People on Facebook, but it's a great closed group where people can find a place for support and share what's going on in their lives. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and I think roll into our program today, because it's very exciting. We have just got some fabulous people doing some wonderful things, changing our dementia care culture around the world. And before I go in and introduce Gary, I do want to just also thank Alzheimer's Disease International, who is partnering with Alzheimer's Speaks in terms of shifting our dementia care culture and trying to spread the word of how to be dementia-friendly, how to change those perspectives in the world. They're doing some awfully fine things as well. So Gary Glazner is the founder and executive director of Alzheimer's Poetry Project, which is just, many of you have probably heard about it, and if not, you will today, and I know you're going to want to check into it a little deeper, because it's absolutely just a wonderful, wonderful project. The National Endowment for the Arts listed the APP, or the Alzheimer's Poetry Project, as a best practice for their arts and aging initiatives. NBC and the Today Show and NPR, all things considered, and the Voice of America have featured segments of Gary's work. It's just absolutely fascinating what he has been able to do. And to date, he has been in 23 states, and internationally he's been in Germany, in Poland, in South Korea, and has served over 15,000 people living with dementia. This is not a small project, and it's not a small vision. And I'm so glad that Gary is with us today as one of those big thinkers. The Alzheimer's Poetry Project was also awarded in 2012 from the MetLife Foundation Creativity and Aging in America Leadership Award, which is really pretty cool because it's all about engaging community. So welcome, Gary. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks, Lori. It's really, really exciting to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you, and you're kind of like the little Pied Piper, and so we've got several people with Gary who are expanding on his project and just expanding this work of creativity and engagement. So I think that that's exciting, and we will get to all of those people in just a minute. But Gary, first of all, can you tell people, with poetry, a lot of people think it's just one of those things that you sit down and you do by yourself, that it's very solitary kind of art, and it's not easily understood, I think, or appreciated by everybody because of its creativity. How do you feel about poetry? Do you look at it in that light, or?
Well, the first thing is I have to say thanks for giving me a new title, the Pied Piper of Poetry. That's fantastic. Thank you, Lori. So I started this work in 1997 in Northern California, and I had gotten a grant to work in an adult daycare center. And there was no instruction, just on somehow to use poetry with the people. And so I hit on the idea of using classic poems that they might have learned as children. And the moment of inspiration for me, and the story I love to share with people, is there was a man in the group and his head was down. He wasn't participating at all, and I would say he was completely unaware of his surroundings. And I said the Longfellow poem, I shot an arrow in the air, and his eyes popped open, and he said, it fell to earth, I know not where. And so suddenly he was able to participate with us, and that was just a really heartfelt moment for me as a poet. And to answer the question directly, what we do is a participatory art. So we perform poems with people, and then we create poems. And so we don't really take the tact of, the analysis of the poem, although we will talk about the meanings. But our main thing, our main entryway in, is to say the poems and how fun it is to say the poems together. So, for instance, a poem that gets a tremendous amount of response is Trees by Joyce Kilmer, that starts off with, I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree. And so we'll do this using a technique called call and response. So would you like to try it, Lori?
Sure.
Okay. And the other artists, we have Michelle Otero, Zoe Bird, Rachel Moritz are also on the line as well. I'll say the line of poetry, you repeat after me. Everybody ready?
Okay, wait a second. I have to get them unmuted, so just a second. Okay, we're cooking with oil now.
All right, ready.
Here we go. Ready? And we're going to use a poem by Edward Lear, just the end of it, called The Owl and the Pussycat. Hand in hand.
Hand in hand.
On the edge of the sand.
On the edge of the sand.
We danced by the light of the moon.
We danced by the light of the moon.
The moon.
The moon. The moon.
The moon. The moon. The moon.
The moon. The moon. The moon. The moon.
We danced by the light of the moon.
We danced by the light of the moon.
Now, we might couple that with holding the person's hand while we say the poem and actually doing a kind of little hand dance. And so that's a way that takes poetry out of the sort of ivory tower that you were mentioning, Lori, and kind of brings it into the room and lets people play with it and lets it be fun, and it's interactive, and you're just repeating the line, so you're using a type of memory called echoic memory. It's really powerful for people living with cognitive impairment. So I wanted to just share one quick story about that poem. Last December, I was contacted by a writer by the name of Abby Frucht. She lives in Wisconsin, and I had met her. And her mom is a resident of Sierra Vista Assisted Living Center in Santa Fe, where both Zoe and Michelle have done programming in the past. And so Abby wrote me, and she said, my mom is at the place with her dementia where she doesn't recognize my voice on the phone. And so she said, can you suggest anything? And I said, well, why don't you write your mom a poem, and we'll take the poem and we'll read the poem to her when we do one of the sessions. So Abby had this experience with her mom, and I'll just read you the poem. It's very short, but here's the whole poem she wrote for her mom. She says, Dear Mom, I remember a song called The Sad Guitar. You sang it to Sylvia and Liz and me when we were little girls. We loved it. You strummed it for us on an air guitar whenever we wanted to hear it. The guitar was sad, but you made us happy. Love, Abby. So we took that poem in, and Abby also said, I imagine all the residents strumming air guitars when they hear the poem. And so we brought the poem in, and we used the Owl and the Pussycat as our model poem that has the lovely line, the owl looked up to the stars above and sang to a small guitar. So we recited that poem and got everybody performing it, and then we started to strum our air guitars as we heard Abby's poem. And her mom's face just lit up when she heard that, when she heard the poem from Abby. And then we created our own poem by asking questions around the image of the guitar. So here's the poem that the group created. A happy guitar with my husband. Everything makes me happy. Anyone makes me happy. To dance makes me happy. The owl and the pussycat, having you here. It's nothing immediate. The sound of a mandolin makes me happy. My father played the mandolin. I want to dance some more. When I'm feeling well and I have good people with me, that makes me happy. And that last line was Abby's mom's contribution to the poem. So that's one of the ways that we work using it, and in this case, a very special situation where we were able to reach out to somebody and have them participate by creating a poem. And then we have these wonderful, beautiful photographs of her mom strumming her air guitar.
Oh, how fun. Those messages, in those moments, they're just so precious. And then to be able to capture them in a creative way, that is just really fabulous. I just can't even imagine how that must make family feel, to be able to see and be part of that and to see that joy. I know what it does to me as a daughter when I see my mom connect on that level, and you can't even put those things into words. I mean, they're just so powerful and so dearly precious. What do you think is really behind, this powerful response that you get from people, this connection with people? Where do you think that comes from?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that's happening. One is that the thing I think we get, or certainly I get the most out of working with people living with dementia, is this Zen idea of living in the moment. And so in that moment where we're creating the poem and we're strumming air guitars and we're holding hands and, dancing to hand in hand on the edge of the sand, we dance by the light of the moon. At that moment, there's no sort of pressure of like, do you remember this or do you remember that? You're just really experiencing joy. And I think that that's one thing. So you're sort of shifting out of this idea of, a typical conversation. Do you remember when we went on this vacation or something like that? And so you're using the poems and the rhythm and the rhyme of the poems to reinforce that. And it's participatory, so the people are having a chance to say it with you. And I think that is part of the strong response. The other thing is they're responding to the emotional sound of the words and your voice and your facial expressions, your body language, all those kinds of things that we're bringing in as poets and as performers and artists. So I think that's a lot of what's going on. It's also surprising, right? Who knew you were going to wake up in the morning and be waltzing around to poetry? So that's helpful too, that surprise element.
Well, I would think that it just, these connections, when they have them, I mean, there's just this, what I see anyways, is just this serenity that just like oozes out of them when they're connected. And it's contagious. Do you guys see that or feel that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's absolutely.
I wonder if, Lori, if Fabu has joined us. Can you tell that?
Yep, and I will let you know. I'm watching for that right now. So.
Okay, so Zoe, we're going to go alphabetically. You are the B, Zoe Bird. Can I ask you to just talk a little bit about what it means to you to work with Alzheimer's Poetry Project?
Sure. I'm Zoe Bird, and I had the great fortune of meeting the Pied Piper of poetry. I think in 1998 in Santa Fe, and he got me involved as a poet in residence in New Mexico, doing sessions mostly in Santa Fe, but also in Albuquerque and in Las Vegas, New Mexico, in a state mental health facility, which was a really amazing place to work, all over the state, doing poetry sessions with people. And it's been such a profound experience. I think every time I do a session, whether, no matter the kind of group or the kind of response, there's always a good deal of response in the first place. It's just, I think every time I do one of these sessions, I end up in happy tears at some point, along with other people. My grandmother, Vivian, was a painter, and she worked as a secretary in the Glidden factory outside Baltimore for many years and developed lung cancer in her early 60s, never having smoked. She came to live with us when I was about 5 in Minneapolis, and at the very, very end of her life, even when she couldn't sit up in bed to paint, she still would take a brush in her hand, and lying there in bed, she would paint the air with this wonderful expression of satisfaction and serenity that you mentioned, Lori. And,
wow.
And so, ever since then, I think I've seen what a joy and a solace art is at every stage of life, and I've certainly seen that doing work with people with Alzheimer's and dementia, and the satisfaction that comes from being able to suddenly recite a poem that you didn't even know you remembered. There was a great lady named Carol at Open Hands in Santa Fe who she was on oxygen and kind of an introvert, and she would usually sit apart from the group at her own table. But almost every poem I recited, she would join in on, and she would recite the whole poem with me. And I would note the look on her face as she was doing this. She was really, really excited that she had this, and she had this to share. I think she surprised herself sometimes. That was a great experience. So Rachel and I have started a branch of the project here in Minnesota, and we've been working with wonderful groups at the Wilder Adult Day Health Center in St. Paul, various, groups of various orientation when it comes to, where they are with dementia and Alzheimer's. And I really noticed, too, that stimulating as many of the senses as we can in the sessions is important. Eye contact is so important. Touch is so important. The sense of smell, if we bring objects in like flowers or fruit or leaves or pine cones for people to smell, that really gets people involved, as well as the rhythm and the call and response. And we do sessions outside in the gardens, the beautiful gardens at Wilder, whenever the weather cooperates, which, as you know, in Minnesota is not all that often. I wanted to share a short and delightful poem that we made in the garden with Wilder's Sunroom Poets last year. And Sunroom Poets are a wonderful late-stage group that I have the privilege of working with. This poem is called In the Garden. I'm talking to someone in another world. Greens and beans, greens and beans. Hello, Miss Green and Bean. Nice to meet you. I don't love to put my fingers in the earth. I just pick oranges, mangoes.
Wow,
very
that was
neat.
great. You read that so well too, Zoe. Really
Thanks.
Will you tell Lori and the listeners just a little bit of how you got to create the poem? What was the technique that you used to create it?
Sure. Well, we had, first of all, we all gathered around a table in the garden, and these community gardens that they have at Wilder are just lush and beautiful with flowers and vegetables. So we started the session by reciting some poems. We did Do You Care at All for Me? My Heart Beats for You. That silly vegetable poem, and that got people excited and laughing, and we repeated lines together. So we did some more garden-related poems in that style and really got the call and response going. And then, we started asking people questions about, what they like to do in the garden. And everybody in the group pretty much worked in the garden on a regular basis. So they talked about things they like to grow and the way they like to work in the garden, if they like to weed, or, Susan, who's from Jamaica, said the lines about, I don't like to put my fingers in the earth. I just pick. She liked to reach up. So we played with the movement of, working in the earth or reaching up to pick, and made this poem together. And then we recited it together a couple of times and got the energy up a little further with each recitation. So by the end, everybody was sort of shouting, greens and beans, greens and beans.
Oh, how fun. How fun.
It was great.
To see them come together like that and just be carefree and really enjoy the moment. I think that's, for me, that's one of the things this disease has taught me, is to be more carefree and in the moment, and to be silly and to have fun and to appreciate those times instead of, worrying and thinking that I'm a serious adult, with tasks to do. And that's just such a gift to be able to get there. So I would think by working with these people, you get so much back. I can't even fathom the joy you guys must get.
It's pretty tremendous.
Well, very,
so
very,
Rachel,
very
Rachel, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, happy to be here.
And will you talk a little bit about working in the project? And also, I think that you guys did something in that garden with putting poems in it or something. What was that about?
We did. Last year, there was an interest on the staff, the part of the staff at Wilder in getting some poems out into the garden. And so we tried a couple different techniques. It was a little bit of trial and error. Had some trouble with rain. Tried putting, just using chalk on the sidewalk. We ended up getting these little kind of yard signs and putting them a short haiku-like kind of lines from poems around the garden, and those were really fun. You could kind of take a walk and see, in 3 or 4 places, parts of poems that people there had written. And so I think, the residents or the participants in the day program really enjoyed being able to go outside and see their words. This year, we're collaborating with a potter who's also working at Wilder to find a way to put poems in the garden in a more permanent manner. So I think we're going to be making little plaques with a design and a line of a poem, and then actually putting them up on the wall. So that'll be really fun. I think.
That's great.
Beautiful too.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to kind of find Gary and Zoe also last year when I got thrown into a residency at Wilder and realized that I actually didn't have a whole lot of experience working with older adults with memory loss, and was anxious to talk to other people who'd done it, and found Gary actually online, found his website, and contacted him, and he was gracious enough to suggest that I come meet with him and Zoe, who he just happened to be in Minneapolis that week. So it sort of felt like this wonderful, moment of grace where I got to meet both of them and hear a little bit about this project, and then and learn also how to do a better job with the work I was doing. So now very happy to be continuing to do work with poets at Wilder. And I guess one thing, in addition to what everyone has said here, one thing I've thought a lot about in the last year is just thinking about kind of the developmental stages of life that we all go through, and thinking about, for older adults, the developmental stage, really, the essential work that you're kind of doing at that point in your life is, acting as a sage or a person with wisdom, being able to tell your stories, thinking about what you've been through and what you've experienced, and leaving a legacy for your family, or thinking about what your legacy is. For people with dementia, memory loss, that moment, that role kind of gets robbed from you. So what I see happening a lot is that poetry is the vehicle to get people talking and to get memories in whatever form they may come, even if it's just a snippet of something, if it's a kind of a fresh image or a fresh memory that's created in the moment, it gets that happening again in people's bodies and minds and souls. And so I've really enjoyed being able to be a witness to some of the stories that come out in the sessions. And I just wanted to share a poem where we were using the theme of hands as a way to get at kind of what have you experienced in your life? What have your hands done for you? And what have you used them for? And we started by reading a couple poems, doing call and response with a wonderful poem by a poet named Jane Hirschfield. And we also did some sensory kind of exploration. I brought some things around in a bag for people to feel and identify, like furry scarves or a pine cone or a really smooth piece of driftwood, and just talked about how things felt in your hands. And then wrote this poem together. So I just wanted to share it, just to get at this idea of what can be captured in terms of what you've experienced in your life. So it's called My Hands. My hands have waved at friends, loved ones, strangers. My hands have knitted a little bit of everything. My hands have cooked ribs for my birthday. My hands have measured transits on the highway. My hands have done none. My hands have raised 3 teenagers. My hands now get to rest. My hands have made cups of coffee and scratched my ears once in a while. My hands have played guitar, accordion, harmonica. My hands have created artwork. My hands have held my kids. My hands have sheltered my eyes from the rays of the sun. I remember being blown away by that last line.
Stretched my ears. Yeah, really beautiful.
Yeah, there's some levity in there, and there's some playfulness, and then also I just kind of was stunned by, it just happened that the very last person who contributed their line came up with my hands have sheltered my eyes from the rays of the sun, which is just such a beautiful poetic image. So that was just, a moment of kind of being able to bask in what could be created and sort of the full range of life experiences that we capture just in, 10 minutes of talking and writing together.
Oh, in 10 minutes? Wow, that's incredible in and of itself.
Yeah.
That you can pull something that beautiful and that picturesque that quickly. That's just really, really neat. Really, really neat. Gary, do you want to? I'm looking. Fabu still is not with us, and I just noticed too that I don't have an email to shoot to see if they're going to be calling in or not. So I just thought I'd FYI you on that. I don't know if I cut it off or not, but
I'll send her one real quick and see what's going on.
Okay, sounds good. And then, do you want to pull the others in, or do you want to? How would you like to proceed here?
Yeah, Michelle, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you guys? It's been so great listening to everyone.
This is so fun. I'm loving this so much to hear the different stories. So Michelle, she has kind of a special role in the project in that she does a lot of programming in Spanish and English, and she also traveled with me to Seoul, South Korea, to do our programming there. So would you talk a little bit about that and, some of the Spanish programming you do?
Sure. I'll start with the Spanish programming. So I grew up in New Mexico, and I found Gary and Zoe were also my gateway into the project. I received an email one day in 2009 that had been forwarded by a poet friend that said that the Alzheimer's Poetry Project was looking for a Spanish-speaking poet. So I reached out to Zoe, who put me in touch with Gary, and the first workshop that I did was, accompanying the two of them at a place in Santa Fe called Open Hands. So since then, I've been able to incorporate a lot of the Spanish language programming into the work that I do. In New Mexico, if you grew up, even if you didn't grow up fully bilingual, if you grew up in a home with somebody who speaks Spanish, then those people probably taught you through dichos. And they're just really short kind of Spanish language proverbs that are meant to teach you lessons about life. So one of them that I like to use is del dicho al hecho hay un gran trecho, and it means from the word to the act there's quite a long path. So they're really great little nuggets of wisdom that a lot of people remember from their childhood, and they often rhyme, and they're very wise, and a lot of them are fun. Another one that we like to use is pan es pan, queso es queso, pero no hay amor si no hay besos. And that just means bread is bread, cheese is cheese, but if there's no love, if there's no kiss. And that one's great because, people can kiss their hands, and then a lot of times at the end of that we'll throw in the word abrazo, which means to hug. And so there's a lot of sensory fun that's packed into that little dicho. When Gary and I went to Korea in October, we worked with a group, with a pretty large group of poets and mostly artists, but also people who work with elders who are facing kind of memory loss issues. And we spent 2 very jam-packed days with them, and we're able to we were working with how to do call and response using a lot of poems that people had learned as children there. So it was a lot of fun because the folks that we were working with were very shy, and it was really interesting trying to figure out how to use how to translate a lot of our techniques into not just the Korean language, but also into like the culture of Korea. So we talked a lot about making eye contact or using touch, and they were like, well, we would never make eye contact with our elders. And so the great thing about this project is that it's very adaptable. We kind of have a set of things, of tools in our toolkit, and they can be adapted for, lots of different settings. So it was a lot of fun. I think we almost started a riot when Gary suggested that we do one poem Gangnam Style. Folks didn't take real well to that suggestion. But what the conversation led to was a beautiful dance and dramatic interpretation of a lovely kind of classic Korean poem. One woman who's a dancer and an actor got up, and as another actor was reciting the poem, she did these lovely dance movements. And so we did call and response both with movement and with and with our voices. So I work a lot with an organization in Albuquerque called Baralas Eldercare. Baralas is a historic neighborhood in Albuquerque. It was really a lot of folks who moved to Albuquerque from all around New Mexico, from villages like right after World War II, during the railroad boom, moved into the Baralas neighborhood. So there are lots of families who have been there for several generations, and lots of Spanish-speaking folks. And Share Your Care is an adult daycare facility. So I work with them about once a month, and I just wanted to share a poem that we worked on a couple of months ago. I took in onions. I was trying to figure out what can I take that will kind of reconnect us to the earth and get us talking about, because, as Zoe and Rachel both mentioned, a lot of folks of this generation grew up growing their own food and gardening, especially here. And so it's nice if they can kind of have that just really kind of tactile reconnection with the earth. So I took in a bag of onions, and, we passed those around, and we shared Neruda's Ode to the Onion, and they thought that was really kind of silly that somebody would write a poem about an onion. But we did that too. So we used the onion almost like a talking stick. So I had one, and as we went around the room, when a person would hold the onion, then they would come up with a line of the poem. So this is our onion poem. Onion. This onion feels like a hand. It's a nice onion, as big as a baseball. We grew lots of onions in West Virginia, lonely little onion in a turnip patch. Está bonita esta cebolla. ¿Quién sabe qué diría? En Cuauhtémoc tienen cebolla y melón. It feels very thin, almost like from a tree. If this onion could talk, it would say, I'm getting so hungry, I'm going to eat myself. It's pretty because it's so round. If this onion could talk, it would say, don't eat me. This onion feels hard. It smells real bad. Onions have a sweet taste. They enhance the flavor of other foods. It's good when it grows. It goes to the children. I was following my children. I don't know what you'd call this onion, but it's round and cold. If this onion could talk, it would say, if you take my outer skin off, I'm going to make you cry. This onion feels like eggplant, smooth, really smooth. I knew the names of all the onions. I forgot. This onion's name is Smelling Good, brings back memories of my mom cooking dinner, chopping onions, a good bowl of onion soup. It smells like vinegar, and they cut it. It makes you cry. Onion heals a cold. Just cut it open, chop it up, put some taro syrup on it, and eat it. Yum. Onions probably grow in the ground, but that thing sticking out feels like a leaf. So maybe it's a tree.
Very fun. You guys did such a nice job in your... Oh, go ahead, Gary.
Go ahead. I was just going to say I love the line about the If You Peel Me, I'm Going to Make You Cry.
Yeah, that one was a lot of fun. He always comes up with the best lines.
Well, and you guys do such a nice job in your reading, of an interpretation of the poems too. I mean, it just really brings them to life, which is so much fun to hear as a listener. You really draw us in very nicely. So thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Well, Fabu is still not with us, so I'm going to just throw a couple of more questions out to you, if that's okay. And if she calls, we'll.
Let's just for the listeners to let them know who we're talking about. It's Babu Carter is the past poet laureate of Madison, Wisconsin, and she's been working on the project for a couple of years and has really been doing a great job. So hope everything's fine with her. Yeah.
I'm just looking at her website, the City of Madison Arts Commission, and she's on there, and it looks like doing just some fabulous things. So yeah, I'm hoping that she'll be able to call in, but schedules change and things.
Yeah, and I know she's working today. So
yeah. So wonderful. Now, Gary, you've worked in Germany and Poland and South Korea. Can you tell us a little bit about the techniques that you feel the Alzheimer's Poetry Project has that you're able to make it work in these other languages? And then also, have you known all these languages when you've gone? Do you have somebody with you or who speaks?
Right, yeah. So I always work with, in Germany and Poland, I had really wonderful translators who were also performance poets, Lars Ruppel and Bogdan Piasecki. And then in South Korea, we had a really great translator who was very excited because she said most of her translation work was business materials, and so she was really excited to be doing art. And so that's key. And the techniques that we use, I'll give 4 simple techniques, which we've discussed a little bit, but we'll just kind of list them now. So the first one is the call and response, where you're saying a line of poetry and having the person recite it back to you or the group. Now, you could adapt this easily for one-on-one use in the home. And I know a lot of people that will be the situation that they might want to try to use it. So this would just be you're simply saying a line of the poem, my love is like a red, red rose, and you have the person recite it back to you. The second technique is to have discussions around the poems. And so last week I was in Toledo, Ohio, and I did staff training for the Toledo Museum. A lot of museums now have programs where they do docent tours for people living with memory loss and their families. And so in that case, we got poems that went with some of the artwork, and then we had discussions around the poems and the artwork. So the number 3 technique is, as many of Rachel, Zoe, and Michelle have all indicated, to use something that's tactile, to use a prop. And so in Michelle's case, the lovely example of using the onion, using the garden, they mentioned, pine cones. We have a lot of luck with doing poems around trees and using bark and leaves and branches, that kind of thing, something that's tactile. There was, at the beginning of the project, I was working in New Mexico, and I was going to a session, and I couldn't decide what prop to bring. And I was looking all around the house, and I couldn't find anything. And then finally, I looked outside, and I thought, I am going to bring snow. So I filled an ice chest full of snow, and I brought the ice chest in, and I made snowballs, and I passed them out. This was at Sierra Vista in Santa Fe. And some of the residents took the snow and started to eat it, immediately started to eat it. And others were, was too cold, they didn't really want to touch it. And then Ruth Dennis, the activities director, said, throw the snowballs at Gary. So there I was in the middle of the room reciting, miles to go, splat, before I sleep, whack. So it hit me how powerful the poems could be.
Literally.
Sorry about that. So that's the third technique, is to use props. And the fourth technique that we use is to create poems by asking open-ended questions. And I think all Rachel, Michelle, and Zoe have given real strong examples of that. I wanted to share one other example. This was in a at-home setting. I had done a talk for the Alzheimer's Association in Northern California, and one of the women who attended the talk, her husband, was a retired doctor, Dr. Fred London, and she asked me, Trudy asked me, she said, would you come by and work with Fred? He loves poetry. And so I had some time after the conference, and I went by, and they had gotten all of Fred's books out, T.S. Eliot and Ogden Nash and E. Cummings and Shakespeare, and we recited poems together. And then we got to the point where we were going to create a poem, and it seemed like he was losing a little bit of interest. And then suddenly he just looked at me. And then this is Northern California, and you can imagine outside of these beautiful rolling hills. And so Fred looked at me and he said, so this is the poem we created. He said, if I don't write it down, it's shh. Notice the color, this gray-brown, that eats up all the land. When you reach out for it, it sneaks away. And so I said, Fred, can I ask you some questions about poetry? And I'll write down the answers and we'll create a poem together. And so I asked him what he thought of when he heard the word poetry. And he said, even though it sounds simple, it isn't simple. It's like Robert Frost playing ball with a wasted arm. And then I asked him what poetry tastes like. And he said, a poem tastes sweet and orange-flavored. It grasps the poet by his trousers and squeezes his crotch, stretching to gain more, and he's lovable. When you mention poetry to most people, they panic. Smart people, dumb people, I have no time for that. Poetry smells like famine wolf dog on a mountain, running up the hill, biting the sun. Once you read the poems, you don't want to put it away. Once you get the poem going, you can actually miss tennis. Poetry sounds like howling wind pushing up the shore. So that was a Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. We ended the session, and Saturday morning at 9 a.m., Trudy called me and said that Dr. London had passed away.
Oh, that just brought tears to my eyes. I'm like tearing up. I mean, that was so powerful. It's so
and he was
beautiful.
a really unique guy, and his obituary, had these wonderful reflections from his classmates at Yale and people that had worked with him as a doctor in California. But I just thought, and just to give a little bit, when I came, he said, I said, Fred, I'm here. I love poetry. They tell me you love poetry. He says, any other day, but today I have a tennis lesson. And so they had changed the tennis lesson. But I love that he put in the line, once you get the poem going, you can actually miss tennis.
Oh.
And this first line, some of the context, the sort of subtext of it is so beautiful because, here's a person that's dealing with memory loss, and his first thing he says is, if I don't write it down, it's shh. Notice the color, this gray-brown that eats up all the land. When you reach out for it, it sneaks away. And we were looking outside at the window of the rolling brown hills. But I think that's such a lovely image to describe memory loss.
Yeah. Yeah, very beautiful. Very, very beautiful. And just shows the power and the insights, people have. And just, I love how he just, changed the perspective of what poetry is. And man, he was very, very good at describing it. Very, very good at describing it. I almost want to get a copy of that and frame it.
Oh, I'll send you a copy. Yeah. And the other thing that I want the listeners to know is that each time I would ask Fred, what does poetry smell like? He concentrated. His face would scrunch up, and you could just see. And then these words would just come flowing out, So he would scrunch up his face and then say, poetry smells like famine wolf dog on a mountain, running up the hill, biting the sun. And it's just like, wow, I could barely write fast enough to keep up with him.
Yeah, that's very, very, very neat. Now, you do most of your work, I believe, in assisted living in adult day centers. Is that correct?
Yes, that is true. And then occasionally we've had the honor, of being able to do one-on-one programming at home. And so, we're looking to do more and more of that. Another direction is to form partnerships with groups. So, for instance, I'm doing a project this year in Wisconsin, in Baraboo, Wisconsin, which is the hometown of the Ringling Brothers. So there's a fantastic circus museum there. And we've formed a partnership with the University of Wisconsin at Baraboo to do service learning for the students, and with Jack Young Middle School. Now, the listeners are probably thinking, do they call University of Wisconsin at Baraboo Boo You? Yes, it's true. So with that one, we teach the kids to recite the poems, and then we bring them into the facilities, and then they go back and write about their experiences. And then on April 9th, we're going to do a public event at the University of Wisconsin there and at the library, where the students will recite poems and talk about their work, and we'll invite the public to come to that, both the middle school students and the college students. Okay.
Well, that'll be fun to get the college students involved. I would think that'll be a ton of fun.
Yeah, they're great, and let's talk a little bit about what's going on in Minnesota. So we're kind of excited to say that we've gotten our first funding from the Dorsey Foundation, which is coming through from the wonderful Jane Tygeson, who runs their program at the Minneapolis Institute of Art. So Zoe and Rachel, talk a little bit about that. You mentioned some of the things that are coming up, but what else?
Okay, let me get them back online here. So, okay, you're both up and running.
Okay.
So, Zoe, do you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. I'll say a little, and then maybe Rachel can elaborate. And well, Jane Tygeson is fabulous. She runs participatory sessions for people with memory loss who are visiting the Minneapolis Institute of Arts. And so she got us connected with the Dorsey Foundation, which has given us our first funding for the Minnesota Alzheimer's Poetry Project. We're going to be working with her doing some trainings for museum staff in how to work with people with memory loss using both visual art and dementia and poetry, and that's really exciting. And we are expanding programming to some adult day centers in both St. Paul and Minneapolis, mostly in lower income areas, to bring these sessions there. We really hope to, in the future, involve multi-generational programming, bringing schools and adult day centers and assisted living facilities together, and also connect with Somali and Spanish and Hmong-speaking poets to work with some of those populations here in the Twin Cities. So it feels like we've got some great momentum here, and we're off to a wonderful start.
Well, that's exciting because you're right in my neck of the woods, so you'll have to keep me posted on all of that.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I would love to actually come and visit and watch you guys in action sometimes. Or
anytime.
That would be great.
That would be really fun. Really fun to see.
We'd love to have you. And we have regular sessions at Wilder, and we'll be doing some collaborative sessions at Ebenezer with the clay artist there. So, absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, that's great. Anything else you wanted to add in on that, Rachel?
One thing that just a kind of a smaller project we'd like to do, but when we're doing residencies, it's nice to be able to capture the work that's created, and so beyond kind of printing out poems every week and handing them out to people. So one of the things we'd really like to do at an upcoming residency is to create a really beautiful book of all of the participants' poems that can be, that they can have, that their families can have, that the day centers can keep. And so Zoe's recently connected with some folks at the Homewood Studio in North Minneapolis that have letterpress facilities, and so that's another thing we'd love to be able to do is work with letterpress artists to make beautiful poems, make a visual product that can kind of match the beauty of the words that come out, and also just give a voice beyond what we've all been talking about. And I think the real strength of this work is that it is participatory and it happens in the moment, and that's I think kind of its primary strength. But to be able to archive and have this work available for the participants and their families, I think, is another really wonderful thing that we'd like to be able to do more of. So that's another thing we're thinking about.
Yeah, I could even see, for the shorter ones, even greeting cards or artwork for the wall. Like you said, just framed pieces would be really cool, I think, especially in different communities, just being able to show that creativity and to be able to display that and get a conversation going and maybe get more funding, as people notice it more.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, definitely.
It would be really, really neat. Now, I wanted to pose to Gary as well in terms of, there's a lot of memory cafes that we're hearing about, and especially in, they're all over the UK, and they're really popping up here in the U.S. Do you see the memory cafe and the Alzheimer's cafe movement similar to what you're doing or complementary with what you're doing?
Well, we've started in Brooklyn what we call the Memory Arts Cafe, and so our model is similar to the memory cafes and the Alzheimer's cafes, but we put the artist at the center. So each event has a guest artist, and they talk about their art, they perform, and then they create something with the group. And so we're having a big event at Brooklyn Museum on Saturday, May 25th, and our guest artist will be the jazz trumpeter Jesse Newman and the dancers Rhythm Break Cares, who host regular tea dances for people living with dementia. So, and these guys are fully pierced young dancers, and so they're really fun to work with, and we're really excited about that.
Oh, that is really interesting. We would love to. We have a memory cafe in Roseville. Actually, we have two of them now that go back to back, and it would be so much fun to have something like this, with us. But we don't have any funding to be able to pay for it at all. And guess who just came on the line? We're going to go ahead and grab Fabu here quick. So let me pull her in. Hi, Fabu. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. How are you?
Oh, good. We are just thrilled that you were able to make the conversation. We were just wrapping up here. So I'm going to throw it to Gary, and then Gary, can you kind of introduce Fabu, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, are we ending at exactly noon, or do we go over a few minutes?
We'll be okay. We'll be okay.
Okay, fantastic. So Fabu, how are you?
I'm fine. Greetings from Wisconsin.
So we've been chatting a bit just about the project, and some of the other project artists are on the line. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience and share a poem with us, if you would.
Well, my experiences have been really wonderful with the elders in Madison, Wisconsin, and how this poetry project has really aided them in memories. Using poetry has been nothing short of wonderful in awakening their childhoods, and also in just showing me the power of poetry that lasts your whole life long. So I had an amazing experience. I walked into senior housing, and there was a woman there who was making soup. So the whole place just permeated with the smell of good chicken soup. And so we used that experience to compose a poem on how to make good soup. We had representatives from Puerto Rico, from Wisconsin, from Kentucky, and they talked about their childhood and what soup and family meant to them. And they talked about it in English and in Spanglish, and that was one of my most powerful memories of how, first of all, you can find famous poets who've written about soup. Then you can find seniors, and that's just a great memory. But then just to actually smell the soup and know that they were going to eat the soup later. So one of the last lines that they composed, "Oh, our good, good soup. Soup is melted memories."
Wow. What a great line.
Very,
really
very
was.
neat.
And it was a great experience.
And so I love that you used the sensory, of smell to be able to develop that, and you guys don't let anything go to waste, which I think is great, and really see, what is triggering people and how does that come into play, and how can we utilize that, and I think these are things that people could do at home with loved ones as well, I would imagine. You just got to loosen up a little bit and go with the flow. Not look for perfection, but just know that whatever comes out is what's supposed to come out. Would that be a good way to approach that?
Yeah, going with the flow, but letting memories flow.
Mhm. Wonderful. Well, I'm thrilled that you were able to come and join us today. This has been a fabulous conversation, and time has just kind of blown away quickly on us here. But you guys are all doing just great work, and I'm just thrilled that we were able to have you on the show to let us know what you're up to. Gary, how do people get a hold of you? If they're interested in bringing the Alzheimer's Poetry Project to their neighborhood or community?
They can contact me through the website, the Alzheimer's Poetry Project website. If they want to send an email, they can send it to me at Gary@alzpoetry.com. So it's GARY@ALZPOETRY.com. Gary@alzpoetry.com.
Wonderful. And if they're interested in reaching out to the others, is it best to go through you then to be able to get connected?
Yeah, they can send a message, and we'll pass it on and get everybody connected. And the other thing we always want to offer when we do stuff like this is if somebody's sitting at home and they're thinking, wow, how do I do this? Feel free to send an email, and I'll help you get started. And we've got a book that talks about these techniques. has a lot of the poems we use. We do online training using Skype. And so there's lots of different ways that we can connect. But as they say, operators are standing by.
Well, I like I said, I can't thank you all enough for the time that you spent with us and the poems that you shared, and just the creativity in which you all work in the realm. It's so greatly needed, and you're doing powerful, wonderful work out there. So thank you all. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and roll into our next segment here with Angil. And I will be posting on the blog more information, but in the meantime, on the radio show, there is information as to how to get a hold of Gary. I'm going to go through each one of you and just ask if there's anything else you'd like to add. So, Zoe, anything that you'd like to add before we close?
Just thank you so much for having us on, and please, anyone who is listening who wants more information or needs help, just feel free to contact us. We'd love to hear from you.
Great, thank you. And Michelle, how about you?
I also just want to say thank you for having us on and for the service you provide through this radio show. And and even if you don't have a loved one who's in a facility, everything that we do can be done at home. So please reach out to us, and if there's any way we can be of service, we'd be happy to do that.
Great. And I would imagine people don't have to have memory loss to be able to do what it is you're doing either. So don't limit yourself there. How about you, Rachel?
Yeah, thank you. And this is just really nice for me to get to hear the voices of folks who are involved in this project, because a lot of us are far away, and really nice to hear, be here and talk with you this morning. So thank you.
Oh, great. Well, thank you. And Babu?
Well, the Alzheimer's Poetry Project has really been amazing. It's one of the best things that I've ever done, and just to connect with the elders in our community and in our families and who are our friends and loved ones, it's just really an experience that I would offer to anyone to share and to enjoy.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And Gary, I'll give you one last chance if there's any last-minute thoughts that you want to share with people.
I'm getting a little teary-eyed, Lori. This has been so fantastic to have this platform to be able to bring the artists together and be able to share our work with your audience. So thank you so much.
Oh, not a problem. And these are all archived, so everybody can go ahead and share them to their heart's content, because this is good stuff that you're doing, and the word needs to get out. So you guys all have a wonderful day, and we will definitely stay in touch, okay? Bye now.
Bye, everybody.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next guest here. This person is doing just phenomenal work as well. Angil Tarach-Ritchey is one of the most experienced geriatric professionals in the nation, and we're lucky enough to have her with us today. She's a highly respected eldercare expert. She's a best-selling author. She's a registered nurse and a geriatric care manager, along with being a speaker and a consultant. And she has been in the world of geriatric care and advocacy for 30 years. And her latest best-selling book is entitled Behind the Old Face, The Aging in America and the Coming of the Elder Boom. And it's been endorsed by highly respected leaders and organizations, and is just receiving excellent reviews from the healthcare professional, as well as from laypersons like myself. So I want to welcome you today, Angil. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Lori.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you, and I'm sorry we ran over a little bit, but we had quite the pack.
That was
session.
A very interesting conversation, and yeah, they're doing great stuff. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it was very, very, very fun conversation, and I'm sure our time will fly by just as fast as theirs did. Can you give people a little bit of background, just in terms of, I gave them kind of an overview, but one of the questions that I typically like to ask is, have you been personally touched in your own family or close friends by dementia?
Yes, my grandmother, she's deceased now. She passed away in 2005, but she had a stroke and a heart attack in one weekend. And she rehabbed pretty well. She went back to her apartment, and about a year later, she started developing dementia, vascular dementia. And so, yes, we had, that going on in our family, and there were some moves and some different things that happened. But, we were touched by it. And I really don't know if there's anybody that's not touched anymore that doesn't know somebody, that needs care or is caring for someone. My mom and my aunt took the bulk of the work caring for my grandma initially and had her go back and forth, but then it was better suited for my grandmother to be in a facility because she was a very social person. So I would take her for weekends, like long holiday weekends or a weekend in the summer, and we would visit and things. But, we were touched by it as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting disease, needless to say, and a very interesting journey. Well, thanks for that preface and background there. I know that you've got this huge passion for eldercare and advocacy. And can you tell us, where'd that come from? How'd you get involved with all of that?
Well, when I was 17, I started working in a nursing home. And I describe this in my book, but I really just wanted a job and really wasn't too interested in caring for people. But when I got there, it was a whole different story. And then I enjoyed the job. I really liked it, and I thought I did pretty good. And I had one patient that, in particular, that couldn't speak or do anything for herself. She never had a visitor, a phone call, Christmas card, anything. And I took care of her well, I thought. I kept her clean and dry and fed, and but I didn't engage with her. At 17, I didn't know how to interact with somebody that didn't communicate back. And there was no training back in those days for nurses' aides. We just kind of went to work. So one night when we were assigned to clean the cabinets and drawers, I worked afternoon shift, I found a box of love letters in her cabinet. It was probably no less than 30 letters from her husband. Amazing love letters. And I just sat on the floor and cried. I would look up at her as I was reading these letters, and she became somebody. She had a life. She had somebody that adored her. She really wasn't, somebody that was just left in a nursing home. Her husband passed away, and there she was. And so everything changed for me. I decided, I felt like I had to care for her for him because there was nobody left to care for her. So I would periodically read her the letters and everything. It changed to emotional care for me. It wasn't just physical care anymore. And I really think, it didn't really dawn on me that was such a significant moment that really began my passion for caring for seniors and advocating for better care and treatment. Mm-hmm. So, until the last few years, I've thought about it over the years, but it really didn't hit me that that's where it all started until I started writing.
Wow. Now, this process of writing, where did that come from?
I never intended to be a writer or an author, and still don't feel like I that's my career. I'm a nurse that loves old people. I got sick. I'm chronically sick with Sjogren's syndrome and chronic fatigue, which changed my life significantly. I can't do the physical work I did. So I figured out how I could continue the work I love within the restraints of a sick body, and thought I could share the same information I share with families and seniors and healthcare workers in nursing homes, hospitals, assisted livings, and private homes through the Internet. I could do that from a laptop in bed. So I just started writing a blog, and things went a little crazy, and I started getting offers to write for other websites, and 4 years later, here I am. I've written probably 70 articles now, and I have 2 books out, and the latest is, you mentioned, Behind the Old Face, which is doing very well. And it's not because I'm a writer, it's because I have a passion for caring for seniors, and I have a lot of experience.
Mhm. Yeah. Did you find the process challenging at first to sit down with pen and paper and go, okay, I'm gonna write an article, and then did the articles turn into books, or?
Well, I feel like God put the book on my heart in the middle of a funeral in 2004. So that's specifically about the book, and I discuss all these things and the experience of the nursing home in the book. But for me, writing is just easy. I don't know why. I can just sit down, and I have to contain myself when people give me a word count. You know, they only want 750 words. It's hard for me to reduce the words. So I don't really have a problem writing. It's just what I feel in my heart and in my mind, I put on paper.
Mhm. Well, and I think that passion just flows. I know sometimes when I write, it just kind of oozes out of me, and I just almost feel like it's channeled to me.
Yeah, I've surprised myself sometimes. I'm kind of once in a while I get impressed with my own writing. I'm just like, where did that come from? You know, some idea comes, and it's, you know, I believe it's from God, but you know, it comes, and I sometimes am shocked by my own writing.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's such a you know, I really encourage people to write because it can be so healing, not only for yourself, but if you decide to share it for others, because we have a lot more information than we think we do.
Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right.
And a lot of times that inner critic kind of beats us up and, you know, tells us, you know, we don't know that much. But we all are gathering life lessons constantly. And, you know, those life lessons can be shared. Those insights, you know, can help others, you know, look and perceive the world maybe a little bit differently than what they did before, which I think is a very, very important facet of the process as a whole there.
Right.
Now, you have basically cared and advocated for seniors pretty much your entire life in a variety of settings. And I'm just wondering if you can tell us what changes you've seen, you know, since even like the mid-'70s, because I mean, that's kind of where I've been in, you know, with the whole dementia world with my mom, and caring for her and looking for resources, and I've seen some significant changes. But I'm wondering, what have you seen?
Well, when I started in Eldercare, the only option was a nursing home. You were at home or you were in a nursing home, and there wasn't anything else. There wasn't assisted living. There wasn't home care. You know, maybe some underground stuff going on, but it really wasn't anything to speak of. So we do have a lot of options now. I don't know that the care is any better. I think it's, in many ways, it's worse because elder abuse is up. You know, it just, I think there's more options, but I don't think that the care has really improved. I wrote an article recently on my website that one of the gentlemen that's in my book that we cared for, I'm still in contact with his son, and he lives out in Washington State, and he sent me an article from 1974 that he had sent his mother, who was caring for his dad at the time, or her mother. I can't recall exactly who she was caring for, but the article could have been written today. It's the same thing that was going on in 1974, the same lack of understanding, the same lack of empathy, and I've seen those patients that were described in this article over and over and over again throughout the years. So, you know, as much as things have changed and progressed with options, I think we haven't done much better with care.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's a whole shift that needs to happen in terms of our care culture, not just dementia care culture, but just our care culture, period. I think we have gotten so out of whack and so busy. We don't even know the impact we have on one another, and decisions are made quickly under deadlines and timelines, and I think creativity is lost because people are still trying to work within the box, and our box is broken.
It's funny that you say that because I facilitate an Eldercare support group at my church on Monday nights. We had this discussion last night about bingo in nursing homes. Like, when are they going to get rid of bingo? Because I don't want to play bingo, and half the people that are in there now don't, but it's one of the only things they offer. So when you talk about creativity, you're right. We need to do so much more than we're doing.
Mhm. Yeah, there's in the project that just the Alzheimer's Poetry Project. I mean, it's fun and it's exciting. I was talking with even an architect yesterday over in the Netherlands, and he was talking about, I believe they're called snoozle rooms, and it was fascinating. I'm like, what's a snoozle room? And they're a sensory room where people can enter. And so it might be like a disco room where lights are flashing, and which would not be good for someone with dementia.
Right.
Overstimulation and the ball going and things. But there was one where it was a beach, and so the floor was sand. The chairs were lounge chairs. There were umbrellas on the table. You could hear the ocean.
That's where I want to be.
And there were pictures, and the lights were heated, so it was warm. There was another one where they actually created the entry of a nursing home. They made it like you were on a train. So there were like two chairs, like you were sitting next to somebody on a train throughout this corridor, and then they had windows, and there was basically, a movie of like you were moving in a train. And while they were sitting in the foyer, they would, be served tea or coffee, and they could just sit and relax. And I just thought, and there was the subtle noise, of the train moving, and I just thought, what a cool concept is that?
Yeah, yeah. There's some people doing some really great stuff out there, and it's just a matter of us finding out about it. Who's doing what. Let's gather together and put our minds together and our resources and our experience and, our ideas and let's do this together.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the goals we have here, with Alzheimer Speaks. It's really about raising the voice of everyone around the world because there's so much happening that we don't know about. And it's doing us all such a disservice not to share ideas. And, we, especially I think in the U.S., we tend to think every concept has to be our own. We have to have our own brand, put on it. And we don't share resources. And we spend ridiculous amounts of money trying to recreate. So we have this ownership that really it's not going to matter if it's ours or not when it comes to certain services, because if we share information, it allows us to create new and better things all the time. And
I agree. I totally agree with you.
And the end user then has so much more available, and it's like, how do people not get this concept? And because they're so wrapped into, the money. We got to make the money. We got to make the money. And the only way we can do that is through ownership. Well, that isn't true. There is money to be made, and money to be saved through collaboration.
Exactly. There's a lot of money to be saved that could be utilized to make a more creative and positive aging future. I mean, we have to create our aging future, and we have to act now because, our system cannot support the aging baby boomers, of which I'm one. For the next 17 years, 10,000 a day are turning 65. And, a semi-private nursing home bed in the United States right now is $85,000 a year average. In 20 years, it's going to be over $210,000 a year. And I expect that that's about the time I might, myself or my husband might need care, or we're getting close to it. That would be like $500,000 for us a year to live in a nursing home that we don't even want to live in.
Yep.
And, we've got to do something. We have to act now. We can't just ignore it and wish it would go away because it's not going to go away. And we really are in need of some urgency here to start making things happen and creating our aging future. We can't rely on the government. I mean, they were never meant to rely on for our to support us and care for us when we were old anyway. But, we have to do something different. It's time.
Mm-hmm. It is time. And I think, the way I look at it is I think there has to be a coming together between the government and between public businesses in terms of working together. I look at the waste of the recreation of what is being done and the layers of paperwork and bureaucracy in both public and private sectors, and it just is unbelievable. I did a talk the other day to a think tank here in St. Paul, Minneapolis area, and they were talking about respite care. And, I said we really have to think outside of the box. We have to think about utilizing buildings 24/7 instead of, or maybe sharing space. We don't do much for respite at night, and so these buildings, are sitting there wasted, and they're like the Hebrew house in, I think it's New York, has an evening day center.
And it's awesome. It is really awesome. I've gone through this same exact discussion with people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's spouses that can't get sleep at night because their loved one has sundowners and they're up all night.
Exactly.
There are adult children that work afternoon shift or midnight shift and have their parents living with them. They need respite 24/7. And that program they have out in New York is awesome.
Yeah, I'm having them on the radio here next month, and I'm very excited because I've used their video a lot in training, and people are just, amazed at what they're doing, and it just makes sense. And they're shocked that more people haven't picked it up, but it's outside the box. It's extremely effective. Talk about cost effective, to be able to utilize that space, and it's so meeting a need for people. The other thing that, we talked about was, people think of respite of having to be this physical space, and I challenge people with that. I definitely think there's a need for that, but I think we also have to look at who needs the respite, not just the person maybe with the illness or needing the care, but also the caregiver. And social media, there's a lot of platforms which can offer respite that are kind of poo-pooed, but they can give people that solace or make that connection to energize them to move on, because that's really what respite's about, is getting re-energized, having that break.
Yeah, and we need to do a better job supporting family caregivers in the United States too. I think we don't do enough for the families that are giving everything they have to care for a loved one.
Yeah. Do you have some ideas along that line?
As far as families, I have a vision in my book for senior living and care that would reduce the need for family caregivers. That is an intergenerational cooperative community. And I go into detail in the book about it, but that's one idea, that can help solve a lot of the current problems, reduce the need for families to give up their entire lives to care for a loved one, because sometimes it's nice to just be the family member and not just always be the care provider. I think there's issues with that, and I agree the same with you. There needs to be respite 24/7. There needs to be some funding for family caregivers. There's no real programs that help them financially obtain care.
No. And what is out there is tightening up, with all the budget cuts, and is getting real spooky. The other thing is I think there's so much focus on cures for things. And I think cures are fine, but in the meantime, we're ignoring massive numbers in need today.
I agree.
And it would be interesting if the U.S. would ever look at us like they look at an outside country, and what their thoughts would really be if they looked at our numbers and our statistics of, the homeless and the ill and the aging. How would they react? I think that would be a really interesting thing, because I think we're doing so much better. But we've got a lot of issues here on our home ground, that need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed in a different fashion, because, I don't think there's anyone that'll say the system is working, the way that it needs to.
Yeah, and I think we're missing the boat that, the powers that be that are up there in the Medicare offices and Medicaid and insurance companies and, aging programs, they're missing the boat by not talking to people that are in the trenches of care. There's thousands of nurses out there every day taking care of people in their homes and assisted livings and nursing homes and hospitals, and they're seeing the problems up close and personal. Nurses, social workers, the people that are actually doing the hands-on care. And I think we need to start getting the powers that be need to start talking to these people, because they're the ones that see the problems day to day. They're the ones that are helping families come up with solutions. And they have ideas, and we're missing the boat.
Yeah, it's that direct line. It's kind of like that open door policy that most companies say that they have. Allowing the direct line staff to come in and give ideas, but it has to be more than just listened to. It has to really be heard.
Yeah.
And taken
seriously.
You're right. But I think part of the problem too is that we don't create an environment that says, when I used to supervise staff in healthcare, one of my rules was, I've got this open door policy, but this also goes hand in hand. You can't come in here and just bitch.
Right.
I want to know, what are your ideas to resolve this, and then let's figure out how to fix it.
Yeah.
Because if you're just going to come in here and complain, that's not going to get us where we need to go. And if you're the one seeing this and spotting this, then you're probably going to be the one that's going to be able to figure out how to resolve it, because what all the resources and dynamics are that are happening, in that particular situation. But it's giving the people the credit that they could even come up with those ideas, and having faith in them, because that's not something that everybody knows how to do or has faith that they can do. So I think part of it is creating that culture and that environment that says, hey, I want to hear your ideas. And, I don't think that we have this perfect. I don't think perfect exists, I think perfect gets us in problems, because we think we have it figured out, and then we stop looking at how to get better. And I think the U.S., and not just the U.S., but I think a lot of countries have struggled with that, thinking, we got this down. And then we've lost all of the changes that have been spinning around that have been maybe subtle, and nowadays, it's way past subtlety. We're at the verge of crisis, and we're trying to figure out how we got there. And we've had those blinders on.
And I think about the elder boom crisis coming as, how New Orleans and Hurricane Katrina happened. They talked about it and talked about it and talked about it for years, that those levees would not hold a major hurricane. Mm-hmm. But they didn't strengthen them. They didn't come up with a better system. They just kept talking about it. And the worst nightmare happened. It happened exactly the way they knew it would one day, but they didn't do anything to prevent it. And we're looking at an elder boom crisis that is going to devastate this country. And unless we do something and quit talking about it, it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's just when. When is it going to get so bad that, everything is falling apart? I mean, right now, businesses are losing billions of dollars a year because of family caregivers that are employed. And this is where we fail as a country to support family caregivers. If they had somebody that could come to the house while they're at work, or they had a respite place that they could put their loved one so they're not getting phone calls all day long, so they're not having to run home for a crisis, so somebody can handle doctor appointments and things like that. It's just all intertwined, and, I guess young people don't realize that this involves them as well. It's not just the people that are hitting their senior years.
Well, and I think part of that is our own fault because we try to protect our kids of this. I know with dementia in particular, a lot of families don't share the nitty-gritty. And I hear this from kids all the time. I want to know, I want to help, but they won't let me in, because I'm a kid. And they see how dementia is affecting their family. And they know that there are certain things that they could help with, but we have to be honest, and we have to start talking about these things. And I'm talking, children at all ages, because you think of the magic that little kids bring to older adults many times is just something that you and I can't bring to the table.
Right. I know, because we take our grandkids out visiting nursing homes and assisted livings, and they pass out candy. And they're we've done it with 3 of them. They're now 5, 4, and 2. And they just light up seniors' faces, and they love it. They love it as much as the seniors do. My grandson told my son, he said, I love going there because I get lots of hugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not something that I could bring there.
Yeah, it's a whole different level, but it takes us all. But we have to be able to appreciate the value that everyone brings to the table, and I think sometimes that is overlooked when we look at something being so serious. What can a child bring? Well, a child can bring an awful lot. So can a teenager. To a mode. Rose, one of our listeners, is just saying people need to help people, and that's so true. And we've lost that piece. One of the things I do when I speak is I ask people what does dementia, the flu epidemic, the fiscal crisis, fiscal cliff, and then the mass shootings. What do those things have in common? And people look at me like I'm nuts. Like, well, there's nothing in common. But to me, it's our care culture. They all come down to how we care for one another, and and it's so important. And again, the fiscal cliff and the flu epidemic, maybe by washing hands, and the mass shootings, how we're treating someone. With disease or with aging, we can't necessarily control that, but we sure can care for people in those situations differently and be much more in tune to the messages that we're giving one another. And, our delivery systems, I think, really, really need to be assessed. And it's sad. What do you think is kind of the primary cause of poor care?
Lack of empathy. I think, care, you can teach people skills, but you can't teach empathy, but you can bring people to a place of empathy, and I think we're not doing that. When you go to work in a facility, a nursing home, you're going to get some quick training with basic skills, maybe some customer service training, but they never teach how to get to know the people you're caring for. And unless you know who you're caring for, you know something about their background, you know who they are, or even understand that there is a whole history and a whole life behind this person, care is not going to improve. You have to get engaged. It has to be real for you, not just a body in a bed. If this is your grandmother, what do you want people to know about her? I put a kind of a biography up in the nursing home where my grandma lived, saying this is what my grandma's about. This are the things that her family loves her for. And this is who she is. So please treat her kindly. Please help her look nice. she's a real person here, and we love her dearly. I mean, my Grammy has had 5 kids, 26 grandchildren, and I don't even know how many great-grandchildren. But, you know, she was dearly loved. And I think it helped the people that took care of her to know more about her history and what kind of person she's been. So I think it's important that we do that. And if you don't know something about the person, still understand. You don't know. You don't know what they've been through. You don't know what they've accomplished. You don't know what, you know, they've served. They've served the country in some way, or, you know, a family, or taking care of sick kids, or you don't know what people have done in their lives. So realize that there's more, and they deserve to be treated well.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I do what I call is emotional-based training to get to just what you're talking about, because we can hear all the statistics that we want to about something, but until we feel the need to change, until we humanize it and own it, you know, it's just rote. It's just a task. And, you know, care is not about this big long checklist that we all carry around.
Right.
But that's what we think it is. That's just kind of a, you know, that for most is the end goal, is to complete that task. But what is more important, and I think allows people to live healthier lives and more productive lives, is how we engage them when we're doing those tasks.
And really, my life has been so enhanced by spending time with the elderly. You know, if people really just took the time to spend time with them and talk to them and hear about their lives, and you can almost see the joy that they've had in their past, like they're reliving their past when they talk about things that have gone on and, you know, that they enjoyed doing when they were younger, or something that went on in their family. You know, they've got a lot to offer. Why are we not listening?
Yeah. Well, and the pride really comes out. One of our guests is saying, I think that the aides are overworked and get paid way too little. And I think that is something that needs to adjust. Those positions
that is true.
Need to be valued more. I mean, they are the crux. They're the front line, and it's really quite sad when you see some of these big bonus packages that are going out to people, and then, you know, or companies aren't doing full time. They're under the radar, you know, to get rid of the health care costs, so that they don't have to assume those. But everything is a trickle down effect, you know, with how it works and how people are able to do their job. You know, is the end result. And, you know, I wish I had the magic wand to just, you know, fix it all and print a bunch of money and start fresh with a plan, but that's not gonna.
Well, you know, just
happen.
my own personal experience. I was healthy my whole life, and then I got sick, and with health insurance, I spent $88,000 in 5 years trying to get diagnosed. You know, that's crazy. I mean, our system is just not right. It's not. I couldn't go to the hospital where I ended up getting diagnosed 10 minutes from my house because my insurance company said it's not within our plan. So they spent, you know, all this money in 5 years sending me to places that couldn't diagnose me. So, you know, I've seen both sides. I have a different perspective, you know, as a patient and a nurse.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you had personal experiences caring for a loved one, but even yourself going through the process of how inefficient, you know, we've become. And even just now, it's like the doctors, you know, don't seem to process it. They plug it into the computer, and the computer tells them, you know, what the equation is, you know, what the algorithm is, and, you know, and it's like, you know, sometimes I kind of wonder, why am I talking to a doctor? When's the day going to come when I just talk into the computer and the computer diagnoses me?
Yeah.
Because there's such a disconnect, you know, with so many of these things. And sometimes you can even see it on the doctor's face. They want to do something else, but, you know, the insurance companies have restricted them. in
right.
terms of what the process needs to be. I know when my dad had he had blood clots, and he almost died because they didn't find him because he didn't have the standard signs of a blood clot. And for whatever reason, I just kind of had this dream, and I said, I know what it is. And of course, they looked at me like I was nuts. But it was 3 or 4 days later when they finally did this inexpensive test to check, and they're like, oh my gosh, we can't believe this didn't kill him, because he was throwing blood clots from one lung to the other. And they said, and they were thinking it was heart problems. And then they went in to do a biopsy because they thought there was a bunch of tumors. And the surgeon came out and said, well, I could have told you these weren't tumors. He was just here a week ago and was clean. There's no way they could create themselves in that short a time frame. But nobody's talking to one another. It's just like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do.
You have to be such an advocate in healthcare these days. You really do. And, the other thing that's, I think, truly bothersome is that, we know that 70 million baby boomers are aging. Geriatric training is not required in medical school, and it's not required in nursing. My geriatric training in nursing school is 3 weeks long. In medical school, pediatrics is required, but geriatrics isn't. Now, most physicians will never treat children, but almost all will treat a senior at some point in their career, if not on a daily basis. And they're still not demanding that geriatrics is part of the medical school.
Why do you think that is?
There's an attitude in the healthcare system about being a geriatric nurse or a geriatric physician, and this has gone on through my whole nursing career, that I've seen that they think the career as a whole, nurses as a whole, see nurses that work in long-term care as not being able to cut it in the hospital, or not being able to cut it in trauma, or not being able to cut it, doing something more difficult as they see it. And the people that are in geriatrics generally truly love it. There's of course more of nurses' aides that just want to get a job, but I just think there's such a disrespect for people that want to be in geriatrics.
Wow, that's sad. It is sad. That's really sad. But there's so much prejudice that we have. Even when I look at assisted livings or market rate apartments, amongst themselves, they don't want to be around those old people. If somebody's got a walker, or wheelchair, or cane, we hear the people living there being prejudiced against others that have declined or need some type of assistance. That's very, very common.
That's why I think in so many ways the vision I have for Eldercare is wonderful, because the people that need care have already given care. They've already provided, by volunteering in the community, they've already provided some type of assistance to people that need care. So when it's time for them to receive care, they're more open to it and more welcoming to it because they know what it's like.
Yeah. Very, very true. Very true.
And like you said, people caring for people, it's about how we care for each other.
Yeah, it really is. And we also have to teach ourselves how to care for ourselves, because we don't do that well either. We just we don't talk about these things. And to me, we could teach so much in school. Maybe even get rid of some of the bullying and things that are happening if we really had an honest conversation of overall impact that we have on one another. Just through simple things. I've gone into high schools and junior high and done some age sensitivity work with the kids, which is real fun. And we play all these games, and it's very interactive for 2 hours. But part of that process we talk about even is, have you ever been discriminated against? And most of them will say no, and I say, you're lying. Everybody in this room has been discriminated against. And those of you that haven't, I want you to argue your point with me. You're too tall, you're too short, you're too fat, you're too skinny, you don't have the right jeans or the right tennis shoes, or the list goes on and on and on, because we put everybody in these little categories, and it's amazing how through those exercises I can actually tell who's been bullied and who has been the bully in different episodes, and they haven't realized their impact on one another. And it's just, and I think that's part of what we need as a country, is to really start talking about and educating people on how are we affecting others, through our decisions and our mannerisms, and what's efficient and what's not, and really taking to heart that treat others how you want to be treated.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it would be a great requirement to have junior high and high school kids have to volunteer and work in a nursing home.
Yeah.
I think they would be enlightened. They wouldn't be so fearful. I think there's some fear with being up close and personal with being old.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, it could benefit our society as a whole if they would start requiring kids to do that.
Yeah. Well, there would be a much better understanding, and maybe they wouldn't be in as much denial as our age is. And
yeah.
Even when my folks were aging, I remember thinking old was always 10 years older than my folks, because that was safe. Then I was never going to have to deal with issues. Well, that was fine till it didn't work one day. And I was in the industry. I dealt with it constantly. And I used to joke about it because they were healthy, and they seemed, 10 years younger than a lot of people their age. But talk about denial, and then all of a sudden it hits, and you can help. And I think this happens to a lot of professionals, not necessarily just myself, but you can help everybody and their brother, and then all of a sudden you're in the trench. And boy, it looks a little different.
Yeah, it does. And, most of us will be in the trenches of care at some point with somebody, whether it's ourselves, it's a parent, it's a spouse, it's an uncle or a cousin or a friend. We're going to have to deal with it at some point if we haven't already.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yeah.
This is the other thing I'm thinking is I have this, talk about this some in my book, but, if you want to open a business, wouldn't you want to be spend time talking to somebody that already had a successful business like you're going to have, so you could cut corners, so you could, not make the same mistakes, so you could be more successful? Why don't we seek the wisdom of our elders? They ran this country before we did. They went through the Great Depression. They've done all these things, suffered hardships that most of us will never know.
Yep.
And we don't go to them and say, well, how can we do this better? What are we doing wrong?
Mm-hmm.
There's so much wisdom in the senior population, so much wisdom.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That would be a really interesting town hall meeting to be able to draw on the elderly and their wisdom to come up with some ideas, because they do. They've lived through so much. They get what's really important and what isn't so much, and I think that is something that really changes with age. I know it has for me. I look at the world very differently than I used to.
Same here. I do too.
In terms of priorities, and very, very different. It kind of amazes me how different.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the cool things of aging is that the wisdom that you gain and the changes that you have in your own life because of what you've seen and been through.
Mm-hmm.
You get a new awakening almost.
Yeah, new, which with that brings so many opportunities to be able to make changes and to, and sometimes it's even just being able to focus. Prioritize things different. They might all still be in the bag, but you're looking for different things and prioritizing the importance of different things within those items. that in itself can be huge.
Yeah, it is huge. And, I think about when I've talked with people in their 90s, they still have dreams inside of them, too. We never think about seniors dreaming, but they still have dreams. There's still things that they want to do or they want to see or, spend time, with family doing or whatever. But we don't understand that because we don't spend the time.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to have you talk a little bit about your book and different aspects of your book, because I can't believe we're down to like 5 minutes already in the hour. So do you want to point out any certain things about your book that might be intriguing to our listeners?
Well, I think, the book started off just to make people realize that there's something behind the old face, the stories, I wanted to change the perspective of how we see the elderly. And through the process with my publisher, it became an expanded book, should I say. He asked me what I thought my vision was for senior living and care, what I would think would be a great way for seniors to live, and that's how the vision came about and ended up in the book. But I interviewed several seniors for the book and featured them, their facial pictures and their stories. And it's real interesting because I didn't specifically pick anyone to interview. I just wanted to interview any seniors that were willing to be interviewed and have their story and photo in the book. And, just down the street, really it's in my neighborhood. One of the guys in the book worked on the original Wright Brothers papers and ended up writing a biography on the Wright Brothers. And another gentleman that's in the book is indirectly responsible for Earth Day because he was the one that announced that the Great Lakes were polluted. And you just don't know who is in the nursing home or the assisted living down the street. These people have amazing stories.
Yeah.
So I think that's a real interesting part of the book. I loved talking with people about their hopes and dreams and, the things that they'd been through. And so that's shared in the book, and I find that very interesting myself. And then, of course, we need to really a hard look at our system because it's not working, and we have to act to create a better one. And we have to do that together. Not one person can do it, and one idea is not going to work for all people. But we have to start acting now because we're headed for a crisis like no other.
Yep, I totally agree. Now, what's the best way for people to contact you if they would want you to come and speak to a group or to be able to get to your book?
They can come to elderboom.org.
There's
a contact form on there, or they can email me at angil@behindtheoldface.com.
Okay, and Angil is ANGIL.
Right.
Okay, behind the old face, is that what it was?
Yeah, angil@behindtheoldface.com.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I thank you so much for your time today, and I can't believe how fast this has gone.
It flew. It was great chatting with you. Nice to hear the things that you're working on.
Yeah, it's always fun and exciting. It's not boring, and I love being able to connect people to different resources, and I think your book is absolutely fabulous, as well as your others and your articles. You're doing great work out there, so thank you so much for all
Lori.
you do. Well, great.
Well, you have a great...
wonderful...
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and have a wonderful Easter holiday if you celebrate that. And
I do, and we will, and I thank you for that. And you have a great Easter, too.
Okay, bye now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'm going to go ahead and just remind people, too, today that we are also going to be doing a Dementia Chats webinar. That'll be at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Central, and that would be noon Pacific Time. And you'll be able to, you can just go to alzheimerspeaks.com and find information on that. I'll be posting that on the blog and on Facebook here in a little bit as well. And today we'll be interviewing Dina, Steve, and Michael about life with dementia. upcoming shows that we have. On Friday, I'm going to be talking with Us Against Alzheimer's and also Baka Saba, who has put together a really cool new video, which will be debuting tomorrow. But that show is at 10 o'clock Central Time on the 29th. We'll also be covering April 5th, transgender needs when it comes to dementia. And then on the 11th, I'm going to have author of Dare to Care, which is a real interesting book, and Dr. Donald Moss on, and he is doing some really exciting new research. So I hope that you can be with us in the future. In the meantime, have a great holiday, and thank you so much for all you're doing. Again, if you want to push that like button or tweet about us, we'd appreciate it. And if you're looking for an Alzheimer's association, check out Alzheimer's Disease International. Bye now.
Hi, this is Suzanne Newman, host of the Answers for Elders podcast and radio show. We are the North Star that guides you through the complicated journey of senior care with trusted experts in money, law, living solutions, and more. So join us on this station, your favorite podcast channel, or just go to AnswersForElders.com. Meet the Wayshowers who will help your journey go a lot easier.